Welcome to the Colombian Code, El Código Colombiano. Yeah, today we're going to talk about ghosting. You know, that little cultural phenomenon that affects all of us in this digital age. Now, as some of you may recognize, we're actually in one of Medellin's most iconic landmarks, which also happens to be a place that's known for being haunted with paranormal activity. And in case you didn't notice, the death mask on the wall behind me is one of Colombia's most important historical figures, which this building also happens to be named after. So, for the code disciples who know our location and who the death mask is of, comment down below and I'll shout out the first one to get it right. Now, if you're like the rest of us who are sick and tired of being haunted by ghost culture, then you may want to pay attention to what I'm about to say. Because ghost culture is not just here in Colombia, it's everywhere. It's like a plague or a virus that's infected both the private personal sector and the business professional sector. There's no escaping it, and your only defense is inoculation through knowledge, which I want to drop for the code disciples so you can understand why people ghost and how to best defend against it when you encounter it. Now, before we begin, let's discuss exactly what is ghosting. According to Merriam Webster, ghosting is the act or practice of abruptly cutting off all contact with someone, such as a former romantic partner, usually without explanation, by no longer accepting or responding to phone calls, instant messages, etc. Now, as you can see, many people tend to associate ghosting with dating and personal relationships. But the reality is, ghosting doesn't just happen in romantic and personal relationships, it also happens in business. And we experience it a lot. So I have a much simpler way to define it. If I reach out to someone, business or personal, expecting a response, and I do not get one, that, by my definition, is ghosting. Now, in this current digital age, most communication happens via some sort of messenger system. So I'm going to focus primarily on these systems or apps. Now, there are typically two ways people will ghost you. They'll either A, ignore your message altogether, meaning they won't even open them, in which case you won't get a read receipt, or B, they'll open your messages and just deliberately not respond to them, in which case you would get a read receipt, which we commonly refer to as being left on read. Now, it gets a bit more complex than that because these apps have evolved to allow users to operate under complete shadow mode, or what they call privacy. Shadow mode essentially allows people to operate under complete anonymity, which I believe actually encourages bitch ass behavior. One of the most common things you'll see is people hide their read receipts, so you can't tell if they've read your messages. But shadow mode will also allow them to hide their profile pics, stories, pretty much everything. It's to the point now that people can block you, and it's damn near impossible to even tell if you've been blocked. But this is the world we live in today, so we just have to adapt and deal with it. So now that we have a clear understanding of what ghosting is, let's talk about why people do it. In my experience, when people ghost, it's typically for one of two reasons. The first being they're simply not interested, meaning they're not interested in you and or whatever it is you have to say or offer. Period. Now, if you're like me, you'll probably say, "Well, that's fine. Why don't they just say that instead of stringing me along and wasting my time?" Well, in my experience, there are three main reasons why people will ghost rather than to say they're not interested. Number one, fear. For whatever reason, people are deathly afraid to say the word no. It's like they have an adverse, allergic reaction to it and must avoid it at all costs. Maybe it's because it makes them feel bad. Maybe it's because they're scared of confrontation. But bottom line, rather than to face their fears, they're going to ghost your ass. Number two, time and effort. Now, these people are so disinterested in you and or whatever it is you have to say that rather than to take the minimal time and effort necessary for them to lift their fingers and write you a response, they'd rather just not even bother and ghost your ass. And number three, rebuttal. This is something you tend to see a lot in sales. When you tell somebody no and they won't take no for an answer, they'll reply back, well, are you sure? Maybe you'd be interested in something else. Then it becomes a conversation that the person didn't want to engage in to begin with. So rather than to risk it, they'll just ghost your ass. Now, their reasoning can be any one of these or a combination of them. But regardless of their reason, it all ties back to the same thing. They're simply not interested. The second reason people typically ghost is because they cannot do or provide whatever it is you're looking for. Yeah, I know it sounds strange, but when people can't do something, meaning they don't have the ability, technology, resources, or whatever, rather than to put themselves down and deal with the possible shame of admitting they can't do something, they'd rather just ghost your ass. So just know and understand, when people ghost you, typically it's because they're either A, not interested, or B, they can't do it. So remember this the next time someone is ghosting you. But I'm here to say, regardless of the why, we don't care. It's 2025 and the Code Disciples are done with the bullshit. So I'm here to tell you how to defend against these ghosters. Now, this is the defensive strategy I employ to combat against ghosting. And while nothing can stop people from ghosting, this strategy will allow you to take back control in the relationship. The first step is to set a question that warrants a response. If you just make a statement or don't pose a question that warrants a response, then you may not get one, and it doesn't necessarily mean the person is ghosting you. So, step one is to set the question. Step two is to give the person time to respond. People are busy, they may have other priorities, etc., etc. So, I have a 24-hour rule. I do this because, regardless of what you may have going on in life, there's no reason why you can't give me a reply within 24 hours. Once the 24-hour period has passed, I automatically assume that I'm being ghosted. At that point, I then proceed to step three, in which I have one of two options. I can either A, immediately write them off as not interested and move them into the dead zone, or B, follow up with them. This is a decision I make based on the relationship and how I feel in the moment. If you're dealing with businesses and providers, then you may need to follow up. However, if you follow up one time only. If after you follow up, another 24 hours has passed and you still got no response, then you immediately move them into the dead zone and forget about them. At that point, they're dead to you, just another ghost. Now, if that sounds harsh, let me break it down for you. Because when someone ghosts you, it's a blatant form of disrespect that to me is no different than a slap in the face. So essentially, this person has just disrespected you to your face. So they're in the dead zone. What that means is the ball is now in their court. If they don't reach out to you, that means you just don't talk no more. Period. Do not block them, just dead zone them. Now, this is important because it's not uncommon for people in the dead zone to try and reestablish contact with you. If and when this happens, it's now their responsibility to get out of the dead zone. You do not, I repeat, do not bail them out, because that's exactly what they want you to do. Their first communication to you should be some sort of an apology or explanation as to why it took them so long to respond. A common tactic you'll see with people who are particularly devious is they'll hit you from a back channel using another app or another number, thinking that you're too stupid to remember how they ghosted you in the last conversation. Like I said, it's 2025 and the code disciples are not falling for the bullshit. Regardless of how they reach out to you from the dead zone, if the first communication is not an apology or an explanation, then you call their ass out immediately. You do not play nice with people who disrespect you to your face. You call their ass out and confront them on their ghosting. The reason behind this is because people who ghost want to avoid confrontation. So you confront them immediately. You don't reward them by giving them a pass and ignoring the disrespect. You don't have to be rude, but you have to check them. If you don't, then you're essentially giving them the green light to ghost you again. So I say all that to say this. Although we can't stop people from ghosting, if you employ this strategy, not only will it help you take back control after being ghosted, it will also deter said ghosters from reoffending. Remember, the code disciples know better. So subscribe and follow the code. Till the next episode. Salute.